The Lost in Transition podcast is sponsored by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, and triathletes get lower rates on their life insurance. Go to healthiq.com/try to support the show and see if you qualify. Welcome to the Lost in Transition podcast. I'm your host, Chris Gerard. Derek Tingle, Anna Burrell joining me here in just a minute. Glad that you joined us here this week. Subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, the TuneIn Radio app, and on YouTube. And always available for listening online at losttransition.com, Facebook and Twitter for our social updates. Connect with us there. Let us know who you'd like to hear on upcoming shows or what topics you'd like to see covered. Very excited tonight to be talking to Andrew Talansky. If you have watched the Tour de France in the past several years, that name may sound familiar. He is a recently retired pro cyclist with Cannondale-Drapac and has quite a career spanning nearly a decade in the sport of pro cycling, including finishes in the top 10 at the Tour de France, the Vuelta a España, and Tour de Suisse, Tour of California, and some day-long classic wins and podiums as well. And he is now making the jump over into professional triathlon. And a really interesting conversation with him on how that adjustment is going, what kind of timetable he sees to maybe be competitive on the Ironman circuit, and just kind of getting a feel for where life is leading him now. So we're glad to talk to him. That is coming up next on the Lost in Transition podcast. Andrew Talansky is a recently retired pro cyclist with Cannondale-Drapac with the U.S. National Time Trial Championship, finishes in the top 10 at the Tour de France, the Vuelta, Tour de Suisse, and Tour of California, as well as a win at the Criterium Dauhpine and a second-place finish at Paris-Nice. Over the past several months, he's made the transition into professional triathlon and joins us today to talk about the ups and downs of joining the rest of us three-sport crazies. Andrew, welcome to Lost in Transition.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be chatting with you.
So after a decade in the pro peloton, I remember watching, you and Cannondale through the years. What let you know after that time in pro cycling that it was just time for a change? What was the driving force behind that?
There are a few driving forces, but I could to sum it up before maybe diving into it a little bit, I would say passion is the word. The reason I got on a bike to begin with, the reason I started racing my bike, the reason I ended up, having a successful pro cycling career and being one of the top American cyclists was that I had a, driving passion for the sport. And, at the end of the day, for a host of reasons, that passion wasn't there anymore. And, any endurance sport, really anything in life just isn't worth doing unless your heart's completely in it. And triathlon, especially Ironman, is something I was always intrigued by. I grew up around triathletes, probably around more triathletes than cyclists in Miami. And it's something I always thought about doing. And, it turns out I'm just going after it a little bit sooner than I thought.
What led you into the side, I guess more the Ironman side of things, the time trial focus? Did you ever think about doing anything ITU, draft legal? How would that fit into your wants and desires as a triathlete?
I mean, I have to be honest with you, the Ironman and specifically the Ironman World Championships in Kona is what has always captured my imagination. In my opinion, and arguably, you listen to guys like Jan Frodeno who've won Olympic gold medals and won Kona twice speak about it. Arguably, I mean, like that's the pinnacle of the sport. No disrespect in any way to the Olympics, but Kona has been going, and it's this kind of ultimate test, right, of mind and body. And if I had been some exceptional 5K, 10K runner when I was younger, maybe I would have thought about attempting the ITU. But those guys are just on another level where the speed's concerned. Honestly, in this, their bike's incredible in the ITU distance. It being draft legal would really kind of take away the only advantage I might have in that, and being on road bikes. And then as far as the swim and run goes, I mean that's really it's like a different sport. It's almost like if you were comparing. I don't know what the adequate comparison would be, but maybe like a guy who can do the 4K pursuit on the track or something, right? Or or a local crit. Not as far as difficulty, just as far as like the difference in skill set required to, say make it on the Olympic team, around and on the ITU circuit versus, the full distance Ironman. It's a totally different skill set. And basically, I said it to other people, but I think even the 70.3s will be short for me. It's too short. It's too, the guys who moved from the Olympic distance, the ITU stuff, have taken the speed in that to a level. I mean, it's almost, I read it somewhere. I think one of the top guys put it well. They said, Olympic is almost closer, or a half Ironman distance is almost closer to Olympic distance than it is to, Ironman, meaning you can kind of extend that speed and that fast twitch, that kind of performance into 4 hours or 3:45 or whatever it might be. But, doubling the distance, especially on the bike, making it 112 miles and the full marathon and all that is, honestly, it's probably the only thing I have a shot in.
Well, it is a very a good analog in some ways, even your day-long classics, but certainly the grind of stage racing probably sets you up a lot better for an event that is also a grind and an endurance-based thing versus your quick sprint and done type stuff. I also wonder, too, with your cycling training, how has that changed to accommodate the fact that you need to run after? It sounds like a simple question, but it also is something that you've never had to do before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, taking this on it's a completely new challenge, and that's what makes it so exciting for me and so motivating. And it's absolutely a learning process along the way of how to, obviously people tell you, but learning to balance all three of the sports. And honestly, it's something I've really been enjoying, that variety, right? Is because you're not getting on the bike every day. I'm getting in the pool almost every day, but that's, I'm also not running every day. So you have mixing it up a bit. And, it would change, obviously. I would say in a given week, the hours committed to training are the same. There doesn't really need to be an increase with combining all three sports. I mean, as a pro cyclist, especially when you're training for, every pro cyclist really, you ride your bike a lot. I mean, it's a lot of time, but like you just alluded to, it's a totally different thing, trying to combine the sports. And I would say it's been a challenge in a good way. It's saying, okay, these are the requirements on the bike. For me, it was a mentally different thing to really realize the longest I'm going to race on a bike, knock on wood, be on the bicycle and then at full distance is like, 410, 420, something like that at the absolute most, right? So you're not doing 6-7 hours on the bike anymore. That's getting more towards your whole race distance. So it's obviously the total time committed to the bike is back down, but at the same time, it's something where there is still a big focus on the cycling aspect of it for me, since, again, knock on wood, that'll be my strongest suit to begin with.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said too for, those of us that are stronger on the bike. The best way to have a better run is to be better on the bike.
Yeah, I was talking about this with somebody the other day, right? And I think, you see some of the guys, maybe Patrick Lang's obviously a great example, but some of these guys they can run. They're incredible runners, right?
Yes.
And triathletes in general. You look at what Gwen Jorgensen is doing, going after the marathon, and you see like the 5K time she just ran it, like that's incredible. And I'm not a runner like that. I never was. Very well that I may never be. But for me, I think the way my physiology is, I think it's very likely that the marathon that I'll be able, to one day run off the bike in any full distance event, I don't think my flat out marathon time would be much faster. So for me, it's about seeing how far. Eventually, it'll be about seeing how far I can push the bike before I hurt the run, and hopefully that'll be pretty far.
Right.
So as far as balance in training, in one hand, you could kind of feel like you're playing catch up in the two other sports. And I don't know if there's that temptation. I know for me, if I were you, I'd be pushing way too hard, probably. I guess, especially with the run, that could always backfire. How has your coaching and your training plans worked to get you to a spot where you're making that progress you want to be, on, I know you've mentioned kind of like a 3-year plan for Kona 2020, without kind of jumping in a little bit too hard too at the same time? How has that balance worked?
That's a fantastic question, fantastic kind of talking point. Because, any kind of elite competitive athlete, even everybody, right, that you meet, whether it's cycling or running or triathlon, everybody has that competitive edge to them, right? And the natural tendency is more is better, and you just gravitate towards that. And, you fall prey to it in cycling occasionally. And that was one of kind of the biggest challenges of moving into triathlon is, obviously there's maybe the expectations that people have, okay, you're an elite athlete, so you should be able to do this. But, I kind of outlined to people that's this, in my mind, this really is a 3-year plan, not necessarily, the goal would be to be able to race in Kona this year. There's a lot that has to kind of go right for that to happen. But the real goal is that 3-year plan is, being Kona in 2020. And, I think by that time I'll be able to put together a race that will be indicative of what I might be able to accomplish in this sport. I think this year is very developmental. 2019 is very developmental because just like in cycling, there is absolutely no replacement for the running and the swimming, right? I mean, I can say that's great that I've ridden and done grand tours and all that, but there's no replacement for the time in the pool and for gradually and very carefully building up the run. And, as you just said, that's something I've kind of, and, it might show this year, I'm going to be overly cautious with when it comes to the run because, if you're constantly dealing with setbacks or you're having any issues, that's not going to get me where I want to be over the next 2-3 years. So we're just taking a really cautious approach. I've stuck with a guy, Jesse Moore, actually, who coached me the majority of my cycling career. He's coaching me for this. We're bringing in everybody kind of in the tri world knows like Tower 26. So we're utilizing obviously some of that for swimming. And Jesse has a really good relationship with Jerry Rodriguez. It's bit by bit. And that's kind of what I've had to remind myself of and say, like, that's fantastic, Andrew, that you raced and you're good on a bike and all these things. But you're starting from zero when it comes to the other 2 sports. And I'm under no illusions that there are any shortcuts. So just taking my time and putting in the work, basically.
So we know you're not taking shortcuts, but you are, we know you're using some technology that's helping you train. And we've just learned about this. It's just kind of really hit the market, or at least been marketed more recently, the Halo Sport, which is kind of a step into neuroscience and really kind of exploiting how performance is really driven by what's going on in our head, not necessarily what's going on in our muscles or our nerves. So I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about Halo Sport, what it is and how it's been working for you so far.
Yeah, I mean, Halo Sport, it's pretty simple. I mean, the idea is to, increase the neuroplasticity in the brain, which can help, basically with skill-centric sports, in my opinion, when you're with your form, when you're repeating things, the easiest example for me, honestly, I use it for all 3 sports, but with swimming, swimming is such a technique-oriented sport, and it's about ingraining proper technique so that you're not just maintaining it when you're swimming at 70%, but you're maintaining it for, 50 plus minutes in a 2.4 mile swim in the ocean or open water. And I think that for me, it's helped accelerate the process. I mean, I had a little bit of a swimming background from when I was younger. I was never the guy winning the, whatever it was, middle school or high school meets, that's for sure. But I think it's helped me jump a little bit ahead of where I would be otherwise. Like you said, it's not there are no shortcuts, and Halo certainly doesn't claim that it is, but I think it can definitely accelerate the learning curve. Same goes for running. I mean, when you've been on a bike for the last 11 years, I would say your running form's not spectacular, or my running form is not spectacular. So kind of trying to ingrain good habits versus falling into bad habits, it's been very helpful to accelerate that progress, basically.
Excellent. So, and also you've had to maybe rework some other habits. So let's talk a little bit about nutrition. We've all watched coverage of pro cycling, and we see the feed bag come out and everybody load up their jerseys with all this food. And we're just kind of wondering what noticeable changes. And we have also ourselves have gone through training and performing in an Ironman. So what kind of changes are you going through as far as nutrition, not only for the training, but also racing? What kind of things are you having to adjust to make it work better for you?
It's a really good question. And, the honest answer is it's something that I could check in with you throughout the year on. I mean, I have no doubt that, especially at my first full distance, there will be a mistake or two or three or five that are made, nutritionally or whatever it might be. It's part
of the package. I mean, I think it happens to all of us, of course.
Exactly. And I don't think there's any getting around that, because it's something my body hasn't done before. And no matter what you do in training, a race situation is always different. So, while I think I have maybe a better idea than most of kind of what I can handle as far as drinks, as far as, solid foods, as far as kind of gels or blocks go, just from my time in cycling, adjusting that and seeing what's going to get me to, off the bike, fueled well, but, actually being able to run, right? Not run to the bathroom will be.
Yeah. You could eat a pizza on the bike, but you just wouldn't want to run afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, I mean, that's kind of the funny thing. You could feed me basically anything on the bike and I'm going to be absolutely fine. But, I've never ran 26 miles or even 13 off it. So that'll be new territory. I would say it's, I had seen one person had at some point, I remember somebody pointed out to me, you said, the pro cyclists have a lot of time when they're going easy to put in calories and drinks. And I was like, I don't think you've ever really been in the Tour de France. Like that. I can assure you, like, there are days absolutely where you're like, okay, but 90% of the time there, either you're racing uphill, then flying downhill, hardly able to take your hands off the bars. And even on the flat days, it's so dangerous that like you are looking for your moments to eat. It's in races like that, it's the exception that you just have a bunch of time to like, okay, this is great, and feed. Usually somebody's crashing in the feed zone as well. But
right. I was going to say, this is going to be a little bit of I'm just thinking now that you're going to be will you be lonely out there racing in an Ironman? Knowing that there's no drafting, you just get to pass each other, and then you're kind of like counting the seconds. Like, I guess I got to drop back, get out of the draft zone here. Are you going to get lonely?
No, I love being lonely. I mean, my whole time in pro cycling, like, I love time trials the most. So, who knows?
Right.
Maybe triathlon was always what I was supposed to be doing. I like being left alone. I like being alone out there, and I like suffering, and I like pushing the body and seeing what you can get out of yourself.
You sound like a triathlete, that's for sure.
I never really liked the fighting and the crashing and the the kind of madness. I really, you do a 3-week Grand Tour, and I would just enjoy maybe like 4 days of it when you got to go, the last 20 minutes up a mountain or something, when finally all you had to do was pedal hard, and you knew that was it, or the time trials, which obviously was something I really enjoyed.
The team tactics are kind of out the window, and it's just up to you at that point and what kind of power numbers you can push down and get across the line, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, when you look at that was my favorite part or favorite moments of cycling. And, that just sums up triathlon. That's it from start to finish. So
pretty much
8 hours of that, or 9 hour, whatever it might be, 8.5 hours.
Health IQ uses science and data to secure lower rates on life insurance for triathletes. Let's just face it, triathletes are a weird bunch of people. Why on earth anyone would decide to do 3 sports when they could just do 1? But sometimes life insurance companies just don't understand the peculiarities that an endurance athlete brings to the table. We're not common in the general population. Health IQ has worked with carriers to expand their guidelines and tailor them to the needs of Health IQ's health-conscious clients, saving you anywhere from 4 to 33% on life insurance. Some things Health IQ understands that other life insurance providers may not. For one, family history is not destiny. You are very likely a first-generation athlete in your family. And just because your parents or grandparents or relatives weren't in great shape and had health issues is no guarantee that you are going to have those same health issues. The second is well managed is a job well done. Only 1/3 of people with chronic diseases such as diabetes, high blood pressure, etc., successfully manage their condition. And Health IQ believes that they're heroes and deserve special accommodation. And one of the ways you manage some of those health issues is actually through participation in sport and the nutrition that goes along with it. And lastly, maybe most importantly for you endurance athletes, low resting heart rate is a badge of honors. A lot of carriers will penalize people if their heart rate is low. Health IQ helps them recognize that that's a sign of excellent health and fitness. To see if you qualify for special rates as a triathlete, go to healthiq.com/try. That's healthiq.com/TRI, or mention the promo code TRY when you speak to a Health IQ agent.
I'm interested in what your impressions are so far of just the triathlon community in general now that you're here. Coming from pro cycling, you're on a team, you're basically an employee of the team at that point. Now in the world of triathlon, and especially on the pro level, you're basically an entrepreneur. You're marketing yourself, you're getting your own sponsors and those sorts of things. But how is that? How are you taking to that? Is that something that you enjoy from the kind of business marketing side of things, or are you just like letting other people kind of handle that and see what falls?
That's another great question. Actually, it's one of the parts I'm enjoying the most. One of the kind of issues I always had with pro cycling was the business model or lack thereof of it. You sign a contract with a team and you're an employee, and normally that's fine, but the financial model of cycling, the stability or instability of the teams year to year, there's so much that's not dependent even on you or your results, right? It's dependent on people running the team, getting a sponsor. The team I used to race for, last year's Cannondale-Drapac, they almost disappeared, right? And obviously I was going into triathlon, but I was watching this unfold and thinking about all my teammates and, Rigoberto Urán, who had just gotten second in the Tour de France, right? So arguably second best rider in the world, who could just be left without a team. And obviously somebody like Rigo would find another team, but, potentially that would have been for, say, 50% of what he had signed a contract for 2 weeks before. So, in cycling, that kind of sums it up. You could be the second best rider in the world, but if you just hit the wrong market year, or you have a little bit of bad luck with the team you signed for, you're not getting what you're worth, basically. So in triathlon, as you said, I think it's you kind of are you're like a startup almost. You're getting people on board, you're building the relationships hands-on. And that's one thing I've done actually is going into this, I've actually been working directly with every kind of partner and sponsor I have for 2018 directly. No agent, no intermediary, because these are people that I want to build long-lasting relationships with, who, I want to look back in 10 years' time and say, wow, look, this has been a really fun journey together. That's the goal, at least. And it was something that wasn't really possible to do in cycling. So I'm really enjoying that aspect of it, the kind of entrepreneur business aspect of moving into this sport.
One of the other things going at it on your own that may be a little bit different, when you're racing for a UCI team, there are only so many pro bike races out there. And I don't know how much power they have to tell you, you will be racing this race or you will not be racing this race, but there's still a limited pool. There are only the Grand Tours that there are, etc. With triathlon, obviously Kona is the goal, but outside of that, there's not really a requirement for you to do, a certain number of races or races in a certain location or anything like that. Obviously go through a qualifier if you want to go to Kona, but how has that been kind of, planning your schedule with that full control, Ben?
It's interesting. I think it's something that's really cool, and it's part of the appeal of triathlon. For this year, like I said, it would be an incredible accomplishment just to get to the starting line of the World Championships this year, just given the way the pro qualification is with the the point scale and, just kind of needing to race more to gather those points. Even if you win, say, one Ironman, that's still not enough unless it was a regional championship. So this year, I will maybe have to focus in an attempt to get there a little bit more on kind of that schedule and where the points are and things like that. But in general, what you're saying is absolutely true. Even in 2019, Kona is going back to basically the you win, you're in model for the pros, which I'm a big fan of, right? Because like you said, there are so many cool events. There are, you have events you hear about like Challenge Roth or a lot of the Challenge Series races. What was it just in New Zealand? It looked like a beautiful race, Challenge Wanaka. And you have events that are local, like Escape from Alcatraz or Wildflower Triathlon in California. And there are all these really, really cool events that I would love to do and definitely plan on doing over the coming years. So the freedom you get in, looking at the whole globe basically and getting to plan your schedule and plan where you want to go, it's really liberating. And at the end of the day, I think it's one of the things I enjoy the most is that it just adds towards making you completely accountable for your results, good, bad, anything in between. You can't blame anybody. You can't say, that race wasn't good for me. It's like, well, you chose to go to that race. So you can look in the mirror and say, I guess I should have done that. But, you're not at the whim of the organizers changing the courses or whatever it might be. I mean, like Kona, you go to Kona, you know exactly what that course is. You can go there and ride it anytime or swim it or run it. It doesn't change. Maybe minor little changes they throw in, but overall it doesn't change. You know what the conditions are. And I think that makes it cool. I mean, everybody knows at every race what they're lining up for, what they're signing up for. And it's a whole new world. I mean, everything from the distance of Escape from Alcatraz, there's, you even have the Xterra stuff. I think there's such a broad variety, and that makes the sport as a whole really exciting and appealing.
Yeah, and funny you mentioned the Xterra side of things. That was going to be kind of my next little question series for you is, do you play any in the dirt? Do you mountain bike? Do you have any interest in Xterra? Of course, the World Championships in Maui. Where's that on your radar?
I mean, it's there. Whether, I do some of the events or not will obviously remain to be seen. We've been over on Maui actually quite a few years during the time they've held the Xterra World Championships, and we've gone over with one of our friends and watched it. So they're cool events, and honestly, I love to get out on the mountain bike. So it's something that I would absolutely, not necessarily the World Championships, but I would love to hop into a few of those races as the schedule permits. Like I said, this year that might be a little bit of a challenge, but over the next few years, I'd like to explore it.
So as you look ahead to 2018, hopefully October brings Kona. What else is penciled in right now on the race schedule?
There's kind of, as you just mentioned, the race schedule is so broad reaching and varied. We're kind of looking at all of it and getting some advice, obviously, from people who've been to the various races and courses and the different, especially the bike courses at the races. And even the swim, obviously, right? Because there's a big difference between a wetsuit open water swim versus, a non-wetsuit.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So, it's still kind of coming together. I'm hoping to kick off at Oceanside. Honestly, it's not a place where I think I'm going to be, lighting anything on fire, really scoring any of those points. It's more to go to a race where you kind of have those top guys like Lionel Sanders and whoever else. I mean, I know Jan Frodeno has come over for that in the past, and whoever else might be there. And you line up and you get to see firsthand, okay, this is where I am and this is where they are. And this is the gap that I have to bridge. All right. And for me, there's something to that, to seeing just sometimes, we'll see, but seeing how big that difference can be. It can be eye-opening, but it can also be very motivating, and you can kind of take that home with you after a race. And instead of getting discouraged from it, you can say, okay, this is what I have to improve. This is how much I have to improve it. And And I like kind of having those quantifiable things that you can look at and know what you have to do to get from A to B.
Right, and it's a perfect apples to apples comparison because it's the same day, the same course, the same conditions. You can look at people's times from last year or at another race and kind of get an idea maybe where you come in, but there's nothing like quite lining up and doing it that very day.
Yeah, and even from going out there, and who knows how any of it'll go, but you put in your bike split and you see the kind of power you're doing and you see what it gets you time wise, right? And you can kind of work backwards from that off, kind of the golden standard, right? If Sebastian Kienle is there, then that's one. Obviously, Cam Wurf is riding well, but Lionel Sanders is a bit of the gold standard on the bike and just of determination in general in the sport.
So that kind of brings me to one other thing. You mentioned lining up against those guys. Going into these early races for you, how do you think, how likely are you going to be to get up there and really maybe over push on some of these early races? Are you the kind of guy like me that lines up against other people and goes, I'm going to try to catch that guy no matter what? Or are you the kind of guy that's going to just sit there, know your power numbers, know your heart rates on your run, know your paces, and stay within that, and just see how the chips may fall there?
That's a tough one. I can tell you, I would say in most situations when I line up to race, I've kind of myself and my coach, it's, you utilize the numbers, right? You train by the numbers, but I've done it in cycling as well. You race by feel. You have to know your body. You have to, and you can utilize the heart rate or the power meter or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to check in with how you feel. And I think that's going to be a learning process for me, saying, okay, maybe you hop onto the bike and you think, oh, I feel really good, and you're an hour in, or you're, halfway through the 56 miles and you're thinking, okay, maybe that was a little over ambitious, but I don't think I'm going to know till I get there. I can definitely say that in these kind of first outings like Oceanside, I'll be there to race. I think it's very likely that I'll have a race, like I have many times in cycling, where you kind of maybe your ego or your mind outweighs your physical capabilities.
Never. What are you talking about? What? That's absurd.
Yeah. No, the goal is obviously you kind of want to keep that ego and your mind in check. But at the end of the day, I love racing. I love the training and I love the process, but I love racing. And I think that's the beauty of it. You get out there and, you could think, oh, I can only do this or I can only do that, but you can change your whole plan and lay it all on the line. You watch Kona this year, and that's exactly what, those guys that took off on the bike did. They were maybe planning to go hard, but they went hard, maybe harder than they had planned to go. And I think that's the beauty of racing, is you can have all the plans in the world, but once you line up, you just have to go.
Hey, so Andrew, there's one question that we kind of skipped over that I'm just really curious about, because I know part of your impetus to enter into triathlon, kind of get off the professional cycling train, was sort of that taking back over your life, getting control of your time and your schedule and where you were, and obviously to spend time with your beautiful family. So I'm curious, how's the family taking to this new Ironman and training in the house? How's it going?
They're fantastic. As you said, early on when you asked, the overriding reason for making the switch is passion, but that passion just doesn't just extend to sports for me. That passion extends to being the best father I can be, being this best friend I can be to people. And, that required making a change. I wasn't willing to be gone for, months on end or a month at a time for a grand tour and for endless training camps. And, and as Bodhi, my son, gets older, splitting your life between two countries, I really, it's not necessarily any big thing. It's just, even if you have a big training day, you're still there in the morning, right, to get the little guy fed, and you're still there at night to read him a story and help get him to bed, or, bath time, whatever it might be. And to me, it's those moments that you're never going to get back, and as much being the best athlete I can be is a driving force in me. It's something that I just feel compelled to do. I can't not go after this. And
right.
In that same breath, part of what inspires me to do it is my family. It's my wife and my son, because the example I want to set for my son is show him that, look, no matter what it looks like, no matter what other people say about it, you go after your dreams, and the outcome is almost irrelevant, because, it's the cliche thing, but nobody regrets the things they didn't do, right? Or nobody regrets the things that they did do. It's always, I think I messed that one up, but
we translated.
Yeah, you got the lost in translation.
Very cool.
They're incredible with it, and I'm very thankful to have such a supportive wife and my son. He's going to turn 1 on March 3rd. But I mean, there's a great example. I get to be home for his first birthday, and I don't know what the pro cycling schedule would hold, but odds are that I probably wouldn't have been. And there's a lot of things like that. Going into triathlon was about taking back control of my own life and writing my own story, and that's what pro cycling started as. I didn't feel it was at the end, so this is a step in the right direction.
Well, that's great. I think that's going to lead you to a lot of success, because I know of all the athletes that we know and that I work with, that keeping that balance of being an athlete, it's not the only thing that you are, or, being whatever your vocation is that pays the bills, it's not your only thing. You have to kind of take that whole person and honor that whole person to be successful in this. So I think you got the right mindset to have some great years ahead.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I hope so.
Best of luck in the upcoming year. Where can people follow you online if they want to watch this triathlon adventure unfold? I know you got the website. It's andrew-talansky.com, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's being...
Which does still call you a professional cyclist, by the way, so you should probably update that.
Yeah, we left the contact page up just kind of in the interim.
Okay, gotcha.
And, basically, that's the only page that's functioning. Kind of in the next 2 weeks, that should be fully operational, up and running. We're gonna have a little blog part of it where I'll be writing some stuff throughout the year so people can follow along. We'll be posting some Tandy news articles and just some videos kind of chronicling things throughout 2018. Obviously it's kind of maybe overdone, but kind of the journey to attempting to get to Kona at least this year. So that would be the best way. Obviously there's social media, but I think the writing pieces and videos we'll have up on the website should be hopefully entertaining for people.
Well, Andrew Talansky, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us on the Lost in Transition podcast. We will link up to the website and the social media pages and the show notes there so people can follow you in this new chapter of your life, and wishing you all the success in 2018, both personally and professionally.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
Remember to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, the TuneIn Radio app, and on YouTube. Always available for listening at the website, losttransition.com. The show notes are posted up there. Facebook and Twitter get you our social media updates. Let us know who you'd like to hear on some upcoming shows. For Lana Burl and Derek Tingle, I'm Chris Gerard. Until next time, may all your transitions be smooth.